Hi, everybody. Welcome to class. We're going to do a beginning of the class poll. If I'm not mistaken, I think we only have three classes left. This class and two more classes, which is crazy. This semester went by so fast. Insane. Insane. I feel like the year is almost over and it just started. Time goes by too quickly. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to do this, and then we will go ahead and start class. Still, people are trickling in. Emmanuel has his whole delegate there in the back of him. That's his whole cabinet for when he becomes president. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys about another minute to answer the survey, and then we'll go over it and start class. Okay. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to go over it. Okay. So this week's class is going to be going over business communication level two, talking about landing the job. So the question was, when you start looking for a job, what do you usually do first? Scroll online job boards, makes sense. Ask someone you know, could also make sense, especially if you sort of know somebody in the field that you want to do or in the industry. Think about what kind of job fits you. That's very big picture, but yes. Apply randomly and hope for the best. One of you answer that, and I'm hoping you actually have done that. I'm hoping you just randomly applied to things and just saw what you could get. But yes, most of the time, I would say you kind of do all of these things. Perhaps in the first order, you think about the job that you want, or then you perhaps ask people you know, like, hey, do you know anyone who's hiring, looking to get a job for this? Then you go to the online boards, and then maybe last but not least, you just randomly apply everywhere. All viable options. The next thing is, which part of job searching feels hardest for you? Finding jobs that fit me? Yeah. Writing a resume? Writing a cover letter? Preparing for interviews? I suspect writing is something that you guys don't shy away from, mainly because I think you guys have access to AI or, ChatGPT, things like that that can help you clean up a resume. Can't substitute like the authenticity of yourself, but can help you clean up and grammatically correct things. So I could see those two sort of being not that hard anymore. But preparing for interviews is arguably the most intimidating part because it really is just you, right? It's relying on you, your personality, and your skills in that process. And then what part of an interview makes you most nervous? Greeting first impressions, that's pretty manageable. Answering questions, talking about yourself, asking the employer questions. So asking the person questions about their workplace, the job that they're trying to fill, the position, not so scary or intimidating. But answering questions, because again, you don't really know what you're going to be asked. Though there's usually a general set of questions that people want to know about you. Mainly, what are your qualifications? What are your interests? What is your background? And perhaps what you as an potential employee or intern are looking for in a job or position. And then talking about yourself. Sometimes it is hard to talk about yourself because you never quite know what is too much, too little. Um, you know, you don't know what the person asking you might be into. You'd be surprised that you might think looking at someone, they wouldn't have the same interest in you, but they do. So let's go into today's lessons and we'll talk about some of these things and how to overcome them. Let's go to the first slide. So, yes, so today's class is going to be about, tackling getting the job, right? So, level one students talk mainly about the resume and the cover letter itself. Here, we're going to talk more about going over the next step. Like, let's say you landed an interview. Last week, we talked about extreme ownership. So we explored how taking full responsibility strengthens leadership, improves decision making, and supports personal growth. That one is kind of a good lead in to this week because you can take things in the past where you took extreme ownership of a mistake or a failure and then talk about that in a job interview um, or an internship interview. And it's not something that's a weakness. It's something that it shows growth and character within you. Like, hey, there's something that we all make mistakes. Everyone in every position ever at any company has made a mistake at some point in their life. So they can, relate to that because we've all been there. We've all been young. We've all started out at some point. So you can take sort of your extreme ownership, what we talked about last week, and use that as something in a conversation in an interview. We also talked about how checking the ego, prioritizing what matters, and simplifying communication helps build accountability in school, relationships, and teams. And then we talked about how practicing honesty, reflection, and consistent action helps us both own our successes and build off of our mistakes so that people in the future can trust us, but we can also empower ourselves. So let's go to the next slide. So this week's learning objectives, we're going to understand how intentional strengths based job searching helps students find roles assigned with their skills, values, and goals, and using platforms, referrals, and organized systems to search confidently and efficiently. We're going to learn about creating compelling resumes and cover letters by showcasing achievements using clear formatting, tailoring each application, and communicating purpose with strong, confident language. And then lastly, we're going to explore how to present ourselves professionally in interviews by preparing strong examples, making confident first impressions, asking thoughtful questions, and following up with clarity and maturity. So, next slide. So before we get into class, we're going to watch a video. But before we watch a video, I wanted to talk to you guys about what needs to be done for this week. I want to remind you that on Friday is the deadline at 5 o'clock to turn in your workbooks. You all make the effort to show up every week, so please make sure that you submit your workbooks on time with the correct information. If you don't know, you can always ask the team and they can get you the information that you need. But make sure that you turn in so that you get the points. Today, make sure that you have your cameras on, that you're ready to talk when called on. If you're unable to have a camera or there's something wrong with your mic, let us know so that we can make note to not call you out in the middle of class so that you don't have the awkward moment of not answering when you're called on. At the end of class, I will do the remainder of the class announcements, which mainly have to do with upcoming speaker series, upcoming field trips, and then your interest for next year's program. So right now, I'm going to have the team show you a quick video, and then we'll get into the rest of class.
Networking. It's a skill that comes easy to some, but for tons of people, myself included, it's a skill that's acquired. Research shows that referrals are a top source of hires, meaning those personal relationships, they can really pay off. So we're revealing the secrets of networking and answering the question we've all asked at some point. Is who you know more important than what you know? For years, athletes have used science and data analysis to improve. Now, we are doing the same for job seekers everywhere. This is job science. When it comes to networking and social events, there is nothing wrong with going alone. Putting yourself in a position to talk to new people, it's actually a good thing. You never know who you'll meet, who they might know, or how they can contribute to finding your next job. Meet Jess, a retail sales associate. She's attending her first ever Fashion Career Expo. A cool way to break the ice in a group setting is by wearing something that pops. It makes for a good conversation starter.
Hey, I love your shoes. Thank you. I just got them. I'm Jess. Rhea. Nice to meet you.
Be yourself. That is the most important thing here. There's no need to try to be someone else or someone you're not. If you're looking to start an authentic relationship, it's key to ask about the other person first.
So what brings you here? I'm actually a buyer. I'm a sales associate. Cool. So...
the head tilt. This is the universal sign that says, I'm listening, purely through body language. And while you are listening, do so empathetically and with curiosity about the other person's career.
Ben.
Oh, just recognizes someone. That is what happens when you research your connections. This can help you focus your energy on talking to the right people.
I haven't seen you since we worked together. How are you?
I'm great. I'm actually managing another boutique not too far from here.
Once you've made a genuine connection, feel free to bring up the topic of jobs, even if it doesn't come up naturally in the conversation.
Hey, do you happen to need any sales associates or stylists even?
Let's pause here. The brain can actually detect confidence in another's voice. Jess, she's definitely feeling herself. Smooth.
I'm looking.
Oh, yeah, I'll pass along your info. You have any business cards?
Yeah.
It's always good to have your business card and resume on you, especially at these kinds of things, but only give them out when asked for.
Rhea. Ben, this is Rhea.
Nice. Once in a while, think of people you know who should know each other but don't, and then introduce them. Follow up to see if their meeting was worthwhile. This one's all about paying it forward. This was the breakdown of networking. Till next time.
Okay. So mainly what that video is talking about is a concept of we work with people that we like. So in order to meet people that we like, we have to get out there, get out of our comfort zone and talk to people. And a lot of the times, networking isn't just about your end result, about you getting what you want out of meetings sometimes. Sometimes networking involves helping other people. And in that, they still remember you. So down the line, when they have an opportunity, they might tell you about it first or present it to you because they were grateful for the connections you made for them. So networking is about giving as much as it is about getting. So when we go specifically to you guys and you talk about job search, there's a strategy to doing job searching. And sometimes you might find a job online in a job posting. A lot of the times you find jobs through people that you know or through connections that you make. So to begin, we're going to talk about some strategies on specifically the job search, right? So you want to start with clarity and not just simply scrolling. So when you sit down and you figure out what kind of job you want to be clear of the specific job you have in mind or the types of jobs that you're looking for, right? So have that in mind already. Sit down and think about, do I want to intern here? Do I want to intern there? Do I want a job that, uses these specific skills that I have or these specific skills that I have? And then next from there, you want to use reliable platforms and filters. All of us probably know about Indeed, about LinkedIn, but there's also Handshake and local community job boards. So when you talk about Handshake, we're talking about people that you might already know. So when you're going through and you're networking and you're getting out there and you're meeting people, you might make a connection with someone that you like and have a lot in common with. And later down the line, when you're in the position of looking for a job or looking for an internship, you might go to that person and go, hey, do you know anybody that is hiring that's looking to fill this position? And they might go, I don't know, but I know this person who works in that industry. They might be, or they might know someone, right? So it's always good to keep sort of, it used to be called a Rolodex back in the day, but essentially keep contacts of people that, even though in the immediate moment they can't help you, they might be either in the specific industry that you're in, or they might be tangential to it. So another way that you could do this is when you go to college, or you could go to a college, they have alumni offices. And in those offices, they usually have a list of people who went to that university, graduated from there, and they keep track of where they're at and what industry. So when I went to law school, my alumni office had a list of all the different areas of law that people practice and attorneys that graduated from the school who went on to practice in those areas. And that was how I got my internship, which ultimately led to my first job as being an attorney right after passing the bar exam. So it wasn't that I went online and went on job hunts. It was because I had in law school already started networking and already trying to meet people that I was able to land my internship. And because I did well at my internship, I actually caught the attention of the other partner that I didn't even intern for. But he liked the work that I did for his partner, that he was the one who ultimately hired me to help him. And that was my first job that I had before I went and opened my own law practice. So again, not just relying online, but going out and going to universities and asking if they have alumni, asking if they have networking events or mixers, because a lot of schools host those where you can go and you can meet people who are already in your industry. So it's a lot better to know people and try to go there than specifically just relying on online platforms, but you might eventually have to use both. When you're going on an online platform, then you want to filter what you're looking for. So you want to filter by location, right? If you live in LA, you're probably not going to want to have a job in Riverside, right? Because the commute would be crazy unless it was a fully remote position. So you want to look at location, if it's in person or hybrid. If it's hybrid, meaning it's part in person and part at home, you want to see how far it is where the in person will be. You want to be realistic with your commute time. You want to look if you're looking for part-time work or full-time work. And then you want to look at experience levels. So if you're an entry level employee or intern, you might want you want to filter for that because you're not going to want to be applying for jobs that you don't have the experience level for that they're looking. Next, we want to go beyond online posting. So I touched on this a little bit. Going to teachers, mentors, coaches, relatives. Like you might, if you want to be a doctor and your aunt is a doctor, right? Maybe you should go to her and ask her advice, or if she knows anybody. Perhaps maybe she can get you a position, or she knows people in the in the industry that can get you a position. So don't discount family. Um, a lot of the times jobs are filled through connections, referrals, and just conversations. Someone could, you could be talking to someone at an event and, they're looking for someone, but maybe they don't have a job posting. And you might hit it off and get a job that way. Next, you want to align your search with your skill strengths. So again, identify what you're good at. You're a good communicator, you're a good team leader, you're a good organizer, you're good customer interfacing, you're good with technology, back end, whatever you're good at, make sure that you're narrowing your search to encompass those skills and your strengths. That way you're playing to your strengths already. Next one, you want to stay organized. So if you're at a time where you're applying to multiple places at once, you want to keep track, maybe in a spreadsheet, of all the places you applied, when you first contacted them, the last time you spoke with them, notes about what happened during that conversation, and then their follow up. You always want to, when you're interviewing, always do a follow up email thanking them for the interview. So you want to keep a spreadsheet of who you've contacted and when you've contacted them. What happened? Did they say at this time that they're not interested? Okay, you could close that one out. Is there some momentum with another one? You want to keep all those notes because it happens, or you might be applying to a lot of places at once and you don't want to lose track of them because it might be embarrassing, or not be read well if you go and talk to somebody and you don't really know the company, or you didn't remember that you had spoken to them, or you forgot who you spoke to. Because a lot of the companies when they're hiring, they're very detail oriented and they want to hire someone that's invested in their company, who's made the effort to do the research and stay organized. And then lastly, when you find the right job, you're gonna find it faster when you search with intention. So again, you're very mindful of the position that you're looking for and the skills that it takes that you have. You want to stay organized and keep track of everyone that you've reached out to and when you've reached out to them and what you talked to them about. And then you want to use your strengths at the forefront. Also, do not apply randomly. I mean, you could, but ideally, you don't want to have to do that. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So this is your guys' first workbook question. I'm going to let you guys go into breakout rooms. If you're a student leader or an alumni, please kick off the conversation in your room. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes and then we're going to come back. Actually, 4 minutes. Sorry, I'm going to give you guys 4 minutes and then we'll come back and we'll share. Riley is here. I guess a bunch of students, oh, maybe they did all join. The breakout rooms, is everyone back? Oh, okay. My bad. I did not realize we were all back. I was so confused. Okay. Eduardo, why don't you share with us what you came up with?
I just said that like going to a community center and looking at job listings and kind of like networking with people who work in the area you're interested in.
Yeah, so you can do it at a very local level, right? So if there's something that you're very interested in, you can volunteer. We have a networking event coming up, so I would say it would be good for you guys to RSVP. Simply for the fact that it's good for you to get practice of talking to people and getting out of your comfort zone, introducing yourself, asking questions. So that's just good practice, but that's also a way that you can connect with people. But yes, you can also do it at a very local level because, you'd be surprised that business owners also volunteer and they're part of the community, right? I'm a business owner, but I also, I'm a facilitator and I volunteer at Youth Champions. So, for people who are interested in the legal profession, which some of you are and some of you have come up to me, it's a good place for you to start and ask me questions, right? So you would be surprised where you'll find people looking, not looking for necessarily interns or employees, but you could find connections in unlikely places that could lead to things. Because life is very random that way. But yes. How about Aurelie? Why don't you share with us what you came up with? She was here. Aurelie, you there? Aurelie Tapia. Okay, never mind. I guess we will go back to class. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right. So the next part, right, besides looking for jobs, is the resume and the cover letter. I cannot stress enough to you guys before I even get into the 5 points. Do not underestimate grammar. You might find yourself in the position where you're applying for a scholarship, an internship, a college, a job, and people will have to be going through potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of applications. And they skim them very fast. And if they find a typo, if they find formatting where your fonts are different sizes, they're different actual fonts, they're different colors, they're different, whatever that sticks out. Make sure that you have good grammar. And that is where, AI can help you. So to begin, keep your resume simple, clean, and readable. This is something that like I learned when I was an attorney. My boss had told me that he would sometimes use bullet points and motions because he wanted to make it incredibly easy for a judge to understand. Because the whole point is you're trying to convince the judge to rule in your favor, right? The same thing with the resume. You're trying to convince someone to hire you, and you want to convince them very quickly and very easily. You don't need to use huge, gigantic words, right? You don't need to use, as kids call them, as my kids call them, big words. But you want to, make sure that you're getting to the point very simply so that when someone reads it, they can read it fast enough and know who you are, and they're not having to read huge blocks of text because a lot of times people don't have that time. So your resume is kind of like a checklist. It's a very quick thing that someone can scan and see what you've done. Your cover letter is the one where you get to elaborate more about yourself. That is something where both of them, you can have AI help you with formatting and grammar, but you don't want to rely on AI because AI can't give personality, right? AI is not you. So you do want to still have room to be who you are and to talk about your experiences, but it's okay to have something help you with punctuation, with grammar, with cleaning up. Maybe you have a sentence that's a run-on sentence that could, be said a little more simply. It's great for AI, to have AI because that helps clean it up, right? And there's different apps, not just ChatGPT, but there are different apps like Grammarly, things like that, that can help you clean up your text. But you don't want to clean it up so much that you don't have a personality. You want to highlight responsibilities and results. So you want, whatever experience that you have, even if it's very limited, you want to highlight what you had to do and the results you produced. So you could talk about youth champions and you could talk about, I signed up for this. I showed up every week. I turned in my workbook on time. I was presented opportunities to network, to, engage in different volunteering programs. And I went, and here's the things that I did, right? So even though it's, youth champions, it's not that you worked at a company, so to speak. It's the fact that you committed it to youth champions and that you were very consistent about it and the things that you did. That's what people want to know about. Hey, I signed up for youth champions and it helped me a lot with my personal development, helped me become more accountable, helped me be more responsible, helped me communicate better with friends and family and my teachers and business, etc. So talk about that. And people might be interested in it, especially if you've been in things and you've done things a long time. So it's okay that you might not have ever had a job, but highlight what you've done because, that's also part of the creative process. And what's interesting for people is like, hey, even though maybe students haven't done a lot because you're young and you're a student, they try to get the most out of what they were doing. You also want to tailor your resume to the job. So you don't want to talk about a bunch of things that you did that might not relate to that job. And there's going to be times where you have in your resume of a bunch of things and you might cut out stuff that's just not relevant. And so that's, it varies from, position to position, application to application. But if you're applying for a job to work at X company, you want your resume to talk about how your skills can help X company, right? You want your cover letter why you want to work for X company and why you think X company aligns with your goals and your aspirations and your principles. And that's going to be different because every company is different. You also want to write, again, I talked about this, a cover letter that shows your personality. So again, you can have assistants making sure that the grammar is good because people will toss out your resume and your cover letter if there's typos. I could tell you that right now. So you want to be very, very prudent because when someone gets a resume and there's typos, it means that that person isn't thorough. And so it can get tossed. So you want to be careful with that. And there's really no reason to not be because you do have, again, access to a lot of free resources to help you. But you also want to be able to talk about who you are and open up. You don't have to get too deep, but you do, want to talk about maybe you had some struggles personally, right? Or academically. You want to talk about those and how you overcame them, right? You want to talk about, the experiences that you had and the things that you've done and how that inspired you to, have a career in this industry, which led you to this potential job that you want to apply for, this internship. And then lastly, like I've said, multiple times, proofread everything twice. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. Well, I'm gonna make one more comment about the resume and cover letter. It's been a very long time since I've had to turn in a resume or a cover letter. I had to do it when I got my real estate broker's license in California. And, so I talked about all the things that I did in real estate. And I remember the first time the Department of Real Estate denied my application. And they said you didn't talk enough about your legal experience. You talked mainly about how you helped manage real estate. So then I resubmitted it and I talked about all of the legal work I've done in real estate because I do real estate law. Then they took my application and said, "Okay, we'll let you take the exam and get licensed." So that was very interesting to me because I had met all this criteria and they said, "Well, yeah, but you didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about all these things, about you being a lawyer." And I thought that was the least interesting thing that the state wanted, but in fact, that's the main thing that they wanted out of me. So when you talk about things and again tailor things to what they want, you also want to talk about things enthusiastically, right? You want to talk about, hey, it's really great that you have this internship available. And I feel like it's really going to help me better understand this aspect of this industry that I believe I want to go into. And I'm really excited because, for years I have been researching about this and, I watched a lot of YouTube videos about it and I've been, studying it in school and I took these opportunities or I volunteered in this. Like you want to talk about what is exciting to you about the position. And sometimes it's hard to make something sound very exciting, but that's what employers are looking for. They're looking for, not someone who just necessarily wants a job, but someone who is willing to show up every day. And as someone that I've hired people before, I could tell you right now, I let go of people because they just wanted a job. And then when they got the job, they didn't even show up to the job. And so it's important for you and the employer, like if you're gonna, take the time to apply to something, make sure you make the effort to actually get the job. And if you can't make the effort or you feel like it's really hard because you're not enthusiastic about the position, perhaps you shouldn't apply for it. Maybe you should revisit that application because again, you don't want to be applying to things randomly, but you also don't want to be applying to things that perhaps you're not entirely interested in at all because then it potentially is a waste of your time and the interviewer's time. So again, that's sort of part of filtering out these opportunities as you go. Good to apply to things, but you want to be mindful that, your time is precious too. So now I'm going to go into another breakout room for 4 minutes and go over what result or achievement could you highlight on your resume that you've never written down before. So be creative and talk about things. And if you've like never volunteered and you've never had a job before, perhaps you can talk about like your responsibilities at home, right? Or you could talk about the things that you do at school and the extracurricular activities that you have at school. Maybe you could talk about your hobbies and like the things like, hey, I self-taught myself to play guitar. And, I did it through YouTube or Guitar Hero or whatever it is. So you don't have to necessarily think about super formal things, like after school programs or volunteer opportunities. Be creative with who you are, right? Think of the things that you do and you're passionate about in a different way. So I'll give you guys 4 minutes in your breakout rooms to talk about this, and then when we'll come back, one of you guys will share. Okay, let me see. Aurelie, since you didn't go last time, can you answer now?
Yeah, I talked about kind of my volunteer experience at a nearby hospital because like it kind of aligns with like my career goals in the future in medicine. So I think that'd be something good to highlight.
Good. Good for you for volunteering at the hospital. And thank you for making the time to answer that. I'm sure you had, I get things go on in the background. You can't always answer when you're called on. Another thing that's interesting about highlighting your achievements is that sometimes, we talk about, briefly shaping your resume and your cover letter to the position. But I know some students, either, some of you students or some students in the program, and even in college, people decide that they don't want to do what they're doing. I had a friend in college who was in accounting and realized he did not want to be an accountant. And he wanted to be a doctor and thought he wanted to be a dentist and went on to go to dental school and went all the way through dental school and realized I don't want to be a dentist. I want to be a doctor, and then ended up going to medical school. So there's times where things will change, but just because perhaps you went down one path of study or, one path of volunteering or one path of things doesn't mean that all that experience is lost. You can take experience from a completely different industry, completely different school of thought, completely different study, and say, hey, even though I ultimately decided I didn't want to be an accountant, going through that process really helped me, understand financials and understand business because while I do want to be a dentist or a doctor, it is a business in some degree. And one day I hope to have my own business. And so I was happy to be able to have that experience and understand, the different types of accounting things that go into that so that, as I go through and, potentially work at a hospital or, or all these things, I have also an understanding of how a company works internally. So that's a way to go like, hey, even though I don't like accounting, I took that experience and got a lot out of it. Going to accounting, I also, within that program, was able to build X, Y, and Z skills. I learned to be more organized about things. Because I had to do this, I learned this. So you can always take things, even though you change. You go from one industry to a completely different industry, from one, study to a completely different study. You can talk about that and you can talk about why you changed. Because someone might ask, hey, for a long time, for me, I went from employment law to landlord tenant law and real estate. And people go, whoa, how did you go from here to here? And I go, well, I had a client in employment law that I end up helping because they had real estate matters. And then I end up going into real estate. And in employment law, it taught me a lot because there are aspects of employment law in real estate. And so I was able to have a better understanding of risk assessment and liability and looking at different problems that landlords also face, real estate developers face. So I was able to take things that I already knew and I was able to find things like when I would approach a case, go, hey, this could be a problem because I know this about employment law. So it's not necessarily that everything you've done is going to be exactly what you do in the future, or you're going to have this very straight path and this is going to be it. There's going to be changes. Even though in high school I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, I thought I was going to do entertainment law. I ultimately went in a completely different area of law. So I was on one path, but even then things changed, and I realized that I had different interests, and I wanted to do different kinds of things. So it's okay to have achievements in a completely different area and talk about that, and that might be of interest to someone. Like, oh, and it shows that you're in tune with yourself, right? That you're able to go and do something and commit to it even though maybe it wasn't your passion, but not resent it. 'Cause that's the thing you don't want. You don't want to resent things. You should never resent anything. You should take the best that you can from it and then move forward, good or bad. So let's go to the next slide. So, mastering the interview from first impression to follow up. So, a few things with the first impression and follow up. You want to have few good stories about your strengths. So I couldn't tell you very specifically what your stories are, but I can tell you good examples are times when you solved a problem, times when you helped someone, times that you led something, or times you overcame a challenge or a failure. So, look back and there's probably things that you could think of like, yeah, for Aurelia, when she volunteered at the hospital, maybe there's a time that a patient came in and it was like, a very serious incident and it shaped the way that she saw things and she saw how the hospital handled those kinds of incidents. And, she was able to step in and help, even though maybe she did a minor part in it. Whatever it is that you've done, try to take those stories and have them kind of ready. And again, always be creative with it. Overcoming a challenge could be simply maybe you come from a family where you have a single parent. And one of the challenges was that you had younger siblings and you had to help your parent manage your younger siblings. And, maybe your younger siblings are in elementary school and you're in high school, right? That's a challenge that you overcome. Like, how do you adapt to that? How, you adjust dealing with the little person who's, like a little kid, and you're like, wow, you're so little and you don't think like I do, who's in high school. That's a challenge. And you could talk about that. You could talk about, what it was like helping your parent. And that means a lot because even though, it's not ideal, I hope a lot of people don't experience that, it does happen. And you could take something that's a challenge, but you go, despite having this, I was able to help my parent. I was able to keep myself on track. And I was able to also help my siblings and fill in that gap, right? And be there for them. So you should have about 3 or 4 stories that you can kind of pull from top of mind. And next one is you want to project confidence through basic posture, tone, eye contact. So you want to sit up, you want to have good posture, you want to speak clearly, and you want to maintain steady eye contact, right? You want to be like roaming around, looking at the desk, looking at the floor, looking at the ceiling. You don't want to like stare at someone, right? But you want to like make eye contact. And then also in one of those things is your tone. So this is something that you might face. I faced it when I was younger, which is like being very nervous and not being able to like regulate that. That's something that always just takes practice, and the more that you talk to people and get out there, the easier it is for you to overcome that nervousness. Another huge thing is when you meet someone and you shake their hand, repeat their name. So if they go, hi, my name's John, you go, hey, nice to meet you, John. My name is Jane. Remember that, try to repeat their name back because it helps you remember it, but it also affirms that you're very engaged in the conversation. When you leave, stand up, or when you sit down or when you leave, you should stand up and shake hands firmly when you introduce yourself, but also when you exit. Um, this happened to me once. I remember it was crazy. I like met a woman and she was I don't know, probably like in her 50s, and she was an attorney. And I remember she shook my hand so hard. I was like, I thought it was gonna come off. I was like, that is the most aggressive handshake. Don't do that. Like, have a firm handshake, but don't be crazy about it. Someone shook my hand the other day and it was like very firm and it was like a power move. And I was like, all right, I accepted it. But like, just don't be super aggressive. That's happened. I had like college classmates that were just like super aggressive with their handshake. It is not that serious. Um, I just have to say that because I don't know why. It's just like I just always think about like people's handshakes because I have like a regular handshake, but I've had some like really insane firm handshakes and I do not like it. Um, First impressions do shape interviews. So it is one of those things. Um, I do remember them though. I don't like fully remember them, but Jocelyn, you're right. I remembered the whole handshake. It was memorable for good or for bad. That stayed in my mind. The president of the business honors program at CSUN, which I was in, he had an insanely firm handshake, and I cannot remember his name, but I remember him, and I will never forget how, because we would all talk about it, like, dude, his handshake is crazy. Have you ever shook his hand? It was funny. But first impressions can shape an interview. You only basically get one good first impression. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on yourself about it, but you do want to make the effort to get prepared for an interview. You want to do some research on the company, what you like about the company, where you think the company is headed, what you appreciate about it, why you see yourself working there. Um, some thoughtful questions. So when it gets to the point, like you have to ask them questions. A few good questions are, what does success look like in this role? Another way is, now that you're filling this position, what are some of the prior people who are in this position, and what characteristics or attributes that you had that you thought helped them excel in it? Conversely, you can say, hey, what are some of the things in this role that you've seen people struggle with that you are looking to be able to have improved upon with your next hire? What qualities do your best employees share? That's another one. That would be a good way to, ask them questions. Um, those things show not only interest, but maturity. Next thing is the follow up with a thank you and message. Of course, when you're heading out, you say thank you, but within 24 hours, you should always send a thank you message. Even if you felt like, oh, it was an awkward interview, or you didn't particularly like, the interview, or you thought, the company's okay, but it's not the one I want to work for. You don't want to close doors. You always want to have, you always want to leave a good impression and follow up and say thank you, because they did take the time to interview you, but you never know, somewhere along the line where you could run into that person. Like that person could work at one company and then 3 years later could be at a different company in a position that you need them to either be a good referral for you or to hire you. And they're going to remember, like, hey, I remember they interviewed, they ultimately, they took another position, or we filled the position with somebody else, but they were really polite. And I remembered that they did a really good follow up and they were very considerate. So those things, you don't want to burn bridges with anybody, right? Because you never know. Again, life is random. You never know when you might run into that person again. Um, and then in that follow-up message, you want to mention one thing you enjoy discussing and reaffirm your interest in the role. So, maybe you talk about like, hey, I really like the time that you shared the story about this X, Y, and Z thing. I thought that was really funny, or I thought that was really cool. Or, hey, I think, I appreciate that you gave me that book recommendation. I've added it to my Kindle. I'm looking forward to potentially working there, and then we can talk about, the book again and the highlights I got from it. Whatever it is, try to take away something from that conversation so it shows that you remembered it, but it also helps them remember it. Sorry. And then the main takeaway is interviews aren't going to be perfect. There's always going to be things in your mind like, why did I say that? Or why did I not say this? But showing professionalism, confidence, and genuine engagement are the main things that you want when you have an interview. So I'm going to give you guys, since we're running low on time, I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to do this. We're going to skip the 90 minutes at the end, or 90 seconds at the end. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to work on this yourselves. And then I'm going to do the closing class announcements. Okay, let's go to the closing announcements. I will say one way to practice, which seems so cheesy, but is so helpful. Practice with your family and with your friends because they will be honest with you and they might be too brutal, which is good. If you can awkwardly get through an interview with your parents or with your friends, you could get through anything. I'm almost certain of it. Next week, we are not going to have class because it is spring break. So we'll resume the following week. Just want to give you guys a heads up. We have, again, workbook. Turn it in this Friday, 5 p.m. Don't forget. Don't lose out on easy points. You guys are all here. We have an Ignite speaker series coming up, not this Monday, but the following Monday. RSVPs are due next Friday, April 3rd at 5 p.m. Additionally, we have a field trip coming up on April 12th. RSVP deadline is also next Friday at 5 p.m. And then if any of you guys are interested in being in the program next year for 2026, 2027 school year, please submit the interest form. Enrollment, I believe, starts in August. So submit your interest form now, even if you're on the fence, even if you're not sure, even if you're like, submit your interest form just so you have it done with because you never know. Other than that, I will let you guys off for the evening. Have a good night.